Well, oh, recording button. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who are with us, we're just waiting a couple of minutes for a few more people to join, and then we'll get cracking. Give it about a few 30 seconds. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Autumn Budget 2025 Explained. I'm Kuba, and I'll be your host for this session. As you're well aware, the autumn budget was announced on Wednesday and it came with its fair share of surprise announcements, some not so much surprises through a few leaks beforehand, a few media briefings. But there were a few expected shifts and plenty of detail tucked away that could influence how UK organisations hire, invest, and plan for the coming year. So today we'll go beyond the jargon and talk about the big tax and employment changes, what's actually changing for businesses, and the practical steps you can take next. By the end of this session, you'll walk away with clarity, confidence, and a solid understanding of where the opportunities and challenges lie. So, I am very, very thrilled to be joined by our two brilliant speakers. Introduce yourselves. So whenever you're ready, feel free. Kevin, do you want to start?
Sure, thank you, Kobe, and good morning to everybody. I'm Kevin Fitzgerald, Managing Director of Employment Hero in the UK. My role is basically to, I guess, execute our mission, which is to ensure that we bring value and make employment easier for UK SMEs.
Oh, and I'm Ryan Pearcy. I run the Digital Transformers Group, a business that's helping SMEs transition into modern accounting and operational technology. But I'm a chartered accountant. I've been a chartered accountant for about 20 years, helping business owners navigate things such as the budget, as well as their day-to-day running of their business. And as I guess launched Digital Transformers earlier this year, this is the one of the first budgets that's really been very interesting to me. So yeah, I've got lots of opinions on it.
Well, I'm really excited to dive in and hear from both of you in a second. But before we do, I'll do a bit of quick housekeeping. This session is being recorded, so you can watch it back and share it with your team later. You'll receive the replay and today's slides in your inbox afterwards. We'll also try to keep enough time for a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions along the way, please do pop it in the Q&A section of your Zoom menu, not the chat, just to make sure that we see it. So without further ado, let's get started. So the 2025 budget landed at a time of fragile business, small business confidence, and Employment Heroes data highlighted that 86% of SMEs worried about its impact and 59% felt overlooked. So, I guess to dive in, what are your reactions to what was announced yesterday? I'll just run through some of the key measures that were announced just to give you a little refresh, and then we can hear from you. But to start off with, there was obviously the salary sacrifice cap. NI exemptions were removed around above 2,000, which added a bit of cost and complexity, what will do going forward. And then we've seen minimum wage rises, so it'll be up to £12.71 an hour, which could put a lot of pressure on sectors with younger workforces. And then we have the tax and NI threshold freeze, which means that more employees will be pushed into higher bands. There was the apprenticeships and youth guarantee announcement as well, which involves funded placements for under 25 to support young workers. The EV road tax and property tax changes too, which covers new costs for fleets and some relief for high street businesses. Then we had dividend and EOT tax changes, which involves reduced incentives for dividends and business exits. And then there's the ongoing compliance burden with mandatory invoicing by 2029, which could potentially add to the SME admin load. So yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on some of those announcements? Happy for anyone to jump in when they when they feel moved to.
Thank you, thank you. There's obviously quite a list there, but the our perspective and when we were speaking to a lot of SMEs pre-budget was probably just that kind of fear, trepidation about like what's gonna be the cost and impact in this budget because it was really last year's budget that hurt with the NI increase, both in terms of cost and compliance complexity. So a lot of the SMEs that we spoke to probably weren't expecting a lot, but they didn't want like a big hit again. So it was almost like a relief in some ways, but also need a few days to figure out like the details of what's in some of the policies and changes, which is why we have Ryan here to talk about it in a lot more detail. But I think our summary was nothing there that really hurt SMEs, but nothing there that really helped SMEs, which I'd kind of say that was disappointing.
Yeah, it was one where normally a budget is a bit of give and take, and I think if we look at the entire country, there's a bit more give to pensioners and those on benefits or young that are kind of entering the workplace. But those in the middle, those that run businesses, it was definitely more take, and not, I guess, huge, not shock, not what we experienced in the previous budget, but still not. It's really hard to find anything where there's a little shining light or something you can do to navigate with this. We've been kind of looking at this for the last 2 days, thinking what can we do as a hold up and go, this is the thing to action. But as we'll talk about a bit later, there wasn't really much that on a positive side for those that run businesses.
Yeah, there's quite a lot to unpack there. I suppose we can dive in a bit further in terms of what this means for businesses. To start off with, you've kind of touched on this already, but how do these measures impact SMEs on a day-to-day basis?
Should I start on that one? I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing dramatic. Let's start there. There are things that are annoyances, I think, more than anything. So the salary sacrifice cap and the change in minimum wage makes the I guess when that comes in, and to be realistic, we've got a little while before the that change to salary sacrifice comes in. But when we did the calculations on this, if you've got individuals on auto enrollment, so they're paying normally like 3% and 5% of employees and employers' contributions to the pension. The wage that they're going to be on that will be affected by this will be either 25,000 or 31,000, depending on how you've got the scheme set up. So anyone above that, they'd have to pay NI, which means there's no point in really doing the salary sacrifice element. So most of your workforce, or if you're on, you're an employee in a business, is going to be hit by this. And so unless it changes, you've really got to consider, is it worth having that in place at all? Like, is it just going to create an admin burden without any real benefit to your employees? So does this in essence kind of just scrap the whole point of salary sacrifice? That was one of the main ones. And then I guess the other one, minimum wage, it creates a cost burden if you've got a lot of employees that are on the smaller side. And I was talking to someone in hospitality earlier today, and they said, the rates were great. We got some relief on rates here for those in that sector, but that's probably going to be completely wiped out by the fact that we now have to pay our staff more. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a balancing act. And depending on what sector and industry in, yeah, it depends on how it's going to hit you.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? Like it could be industry sector specific in some ways. So that's why Ryan's here, right? Like to help people actually figure out what is the actual financial impact and how should SMEs think about those changes when they do come in. One that was interesting to me, and probably because it was quite a personal relation, was the apprenticeships, like the increased funding for apprenticeships and um for our listeners, like that's how I actually started my career, like straight out of secondary school and into an accounting firm, which was an SME themselves, and did an apprenticeship in accounting through ACCA. So I was really happy to see that because I think what a lot of, I guess, younger employees don't see is like the opportunity to get brilliant training when you work inside an SME. Like you get to see all parts of the business. You kind of start to understand the mechanics of the business. Sometimes you're moved around departments pretty quickly because you just have to do whatever is needed to be done. So seeing that help, I think will kind of relieve some of the stress on the younger version, like or sorry, younger workforce who are looking for, well, what's out there and what roles can I get, but also supporting SMEs with the cost of it and bringing good talent into their business if they need apprentices, right? Like it tends to be industry sector focused as well.
Yeah, as you said, different sectors will be impacted in different ways. And a lot of these changes sort of will have a bit of, businesses will have a bit of time to prepare for some of these measures. But do they generally make it easier or harder to run a small business? Some people have said that the measures announced are relatively fair. Others feel that there will be a lot of hiring constraints. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Oh, when I speak to SMEs and when we survey as well, like it kind of feels like they're in a state now where it's just continue as is. So I don't think there's like a big relief that's been provided or anything to get really excited about. Like, so it's hard to say it makes it easier or harder. What we were looking for in the budget is how can the policies remove the compliance cost and I guess the administrative burden, right, that SMEs wear, all the way through payroll and HR, like it is a heavy load. Um, so it's maybe not what was actually said in the budget, but was not brought. There just seems to be more and more compliance, like for businesses, which really don't need.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
there's quite a lot of things that come together to make this challenging. So I'll try and pick out different things that were talked about, forecasted, and announced, and try and bring that into an entire picture. So one of the main things that I guess they were trying to do as a government when doing this is balance the books, but also increase or maintain growth. And one of the negatives is although the short term growth in the economy is higher than predicted, the longer term growth actually reduces. And the challenge with that is that's going to put pressure on what you can do in increasing your prices to your customers because there's less, I guess, buying power out there. If you increase your prices too much, you're just going to put people off engaging with you, and therefore you can't really push your top line that hard. Now, if you've got increasing payroll costs, as we might do with minimum wage, depending on your balance, or with the salary sacrifice and the fact that you don't have that benefit from reduced NI costs longer term, I guess, when if we get into 2029, that we've got slightly higher costs, we've got a restriction on what we can do to increase our prices, so our profit margins are squeezed. Now, the other burden, the other change that comes out of that is if our profit margins are squeezed, we've now got the issue that they've increased dividend tax. So the extraction of those profits after tax causes a challenge and a problem for you as a business owner because I guess, you're unable to extract maybe as much, and when you do, you're being taxed more on that extraction. And that is probably how multiple different elements and announcements that individually haven't had a big impact together comes to actually put a bit more pressure on the SME market. And so I think there's frustrations from that side. And one of the big things I think that has come out of this is that the way they've changed the dividend tax, combined with historical changes to corporation tax, etc., is meant that actually that balance of either giving yourself a salary as a business owner or we're having a reduced salary and taking it out as dividends has now shifted more towards having a salary. The tax benefit of doing it through dividends is so marginally small now that having a salary kind of protects you more because you're never going to be asked to pay that money back. If you extract money through dividends, there is that risk of being of having to repay it. If you're kind of getting into that negative net asset perspective, if you're really like close on your cash flow, what's in your bank, and what your profitability is overall. So you may want to shift to salary where you don't have those risks. You can continue to pay yourself even if you're struggling as a business. So this isn't advice. This isn't you going saying you should do this, but I would have a strong conversation with your accountant, your business advisor on should I be salaried? Should I be taking money out as dividends? I think that's one of the biggest shifts I've seen when you look at all this get together. You're muted,
So
Kuba, if you're talking.
the joys of technical difficulties. Bear with us.
I know,
Um,
live webinar.
Ryan, I think that's really interesting because like this could you call it like not shadow taxing, right? But like this is really where people need like professional advice to sit back and say, well, where does this all compound and where does it actually fall out and impact us? So I think that's really good advice, like to say to people, hey, pre-change in tax year, like you've got to have this conversation with your accountant or business advisor to honestly, like I guess work through that and see like the impact. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And there is I guess a question in the Q&A side that I want to pick up on in that obviously you've got people that are on a pension scheme, auto enrollment, but you've got those that are also contracted to pay into their pension. We're not saying you shouldn't be paying into the pension, but if you are using salary sacrifice as a method for you and your employee to benefit from reduced NI rates, that is going to be eroded. That's going to be removed. And so essentially, the cost to you and the employee could increase. And what I think the impact will be is it will likely impact the ongoing, I guess, increase in pays that you can offer because you have to now factor in this additional cost. And you may therefore not be able to pay your employees as much as you'd wanted to from a pay rise perspective going forward, but you still need to balance that in the marketplace. Overall, I think that this will impact pay rises over the next couple of years or closer to when we get to that salary sacrifice perspective. But you need to plan for it. And the big thing we need to flag is it isn't now. It is, I think it was 2029. I don't know if anyone's got the stat on them to confirm that, but that means that you've got quite a while to, I guess, plan for that, work out what you're going to do. It's not a rush impact. Maybe vet, discuss with others to work out what they're going to do to address this. And are they going to continue to offer salary sacrifice, but in a small area? How are they going to manage those pay rises as you get to that? All we can, I guess, hope for is that the economy works better than is forecasted in the latest budget.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I thought that was a really interesting point that we had a quick kind of chat on earlier because it is relatively typical, for businesses to look at rising costs and obviously pass it on through increased prices for their product or services that they provide. But if the outlook for the economy is quite low, like in terms of growth, that's when you start to get like quite a bit of like friction, right? Like in the ability to do that. And obviously, um, one of the biggest challenges SMEs face is hiring and retaining talent. So it's you kind of get into this situation where you're saying, well, we obviously want to give people pay rises, but the economy doesn't look like it's going in the right direction just yet. Um, so it's trying to find ways to actually maneuver, and really sitting down with a professional, like a professional advisor to get that advice.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel that the budget has done enough to support SMEs, or has it sort of added more pressure, generally speaking? Obviously, there weren't loads of measures that were introduced that will change things in the immediate term, but yeah, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts.
I think it's kept the pressure on rather than added pressure. But like I think like what Ryan is saying is there's obviously some pieces there that probably people need to figure out like the true impact and like the materiality of that impact. Um, I don't think there's anything in the budget where SMEs would be cheering about and saying like this is brilliant. Maybe the apprenticeships piece, but again, that is sector or almost business specific. So I don't think there's been a relief to really help SMEs like keep doing what they're doing or increase and grow if that's their goal. So yeah, definitely there's a feeling from the SMEs that I speak to and certainly from ourselves like that it's probably just a bit disappointing. Like they obviously power a big part of the economy and represent like a really large proportion of hiring across the UK. So I think it would have been really welcome to see some relief, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
agreed. The only thing I'd
Yeah.
probably say is I'd probably lean a bit more into the fact that um, in certain sectors, so if you're hospitality, you're retail, and you're small, then there's some nice things in there. You've got some rates reductions that are coming, and that will help. But generally, those sectors also have lower, I guess, salaried waged individuals, and their salaries are going to go up because of the increase in minimum wage. So there's a bit of a give and take there. So although they're giving one hand, they're taking with the other, overall it might balance itself out. For every other SME, every other sector, I would say that it's probably been a negative one, and it's not a directly negative one. It's more hitting you as a business owner and how you extract money. It's more hitting you in how the growth forecasts are going to allow you to grow, and there's always opportunities. So you may be in that space where you can significantly grow, and this isn't going to have a negative impact. But overall, over the entire economy, I think this is going to be a challenging period, and they've not really helped us as business owners by going, okay, well, we understand it's a challenging period. Let's rein in some of the compliance requirements. They're just pushing more on that. So to, I guess, to kind of summarize those, we've got, as Kuba said earlier, we've got mandatory e-invoicing coming in 2029. So you need technology that will enable you to send your invoices digitally to other businesses. You've also got Making Tax Digital, which is not going away. The only benefit they've said is that for the first year in both of these, they're going to be very lenient in penalties. So great, they're not going to fine us, but you still need to do it.
Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah,
lot to
just if I
consider.
could maybe add in on e-invoicing there, because I lived through this change when I was in Singapore a few years ago, and really what it did trigger was a mass move from desktop systems to cloud. And I know obviously we talk about digitization a lot, but I think people need to actually like look at that really carefully, because it can happen really quickly around you, because suppliers and customers actually start using e-invoicing, and then if you're the kind of part in the chain that doesn't actually that you're not ready for it, like you can really kind of hold back. And it is a big benefit for businesses. It just makes obviously invoicing, and they've shown like the speeding up of debt collection because of the like digital invoicing through the e-invoicing network. So that will be a big piece that's coming down the line over the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely one to look out for. Um, just moving on. So yeah, the budget it's landed at a time where business confidence is already fragile. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, recent employment hero research shows that 86% of are worried about the impact of the budget, and 59% feel that budget decisions don't adequately consider SMEs. So it's no surprise that a lot of businesses are feeling overwhelmed and trying to pass a lot of this information and how it will impact them. But that there is a lot of time, as we've touched on, to prepare for the upcoming changes to ensure that your business is ahead. So I wanted to sort of circle back to that a little bit and ask, what are the next practical steps that businesses can take or can outline to ensure that they're prepared for the changes?
Sorry, I
Who
was
wants?
slightly distracted because I'm trying to get into the chat an article which you may all find helpful. A lot of people have said it'd be helpful to see some of the summaries of what the things we're talking about. So I've added into the chat an article that I know has been written on the back end from people involved in Employment Hero. I know I've contributed, so you may want to open that whilst we're discussing as reference to some of the things we're picking up. So yeah, what are some of the practical steps? There's a few things to pick up on. I guess we've talked about salary sacrifice. That's quite a way off. You've got a while to plan on that. There's some legal things just to make sure you've got your policies in place, that they're updated, they're ready for that change. You need to make sure that you've communicated that effectively with your team. You need to make sure that you're going to be compliant as you go into new minimum wage increases. But I guess what can you do to some extent to help? I know that Kevin has already talked about the fact that you've got the apprenticeship scheme. If this is something you haven't done or haven't got in place and you've got more junior workers, then I would definitely explore this. The government are pushing this quite heavily. I know in some sectors, especially the accounting sector, it's something that we've lent into over the last decade and has had a big shift in improving the quality of staff that come through, because of the way they're supported at a lower cost to us. We used to hire people that came out of university. That has now shifted to an apprenticeship scheme. So definitely something I would explore if you're in a sector that enables you to do that. we've talked about or mentioned the electric vehicles side, the I guess additional cost that's going to come with that. If you have been involved in, I guess, bringing in an electric fleet historically, you may want to relook at that because it's now not going to be as, I guess, beneficial as it has been in the past. So whether you should be buying electric or petrol or diesel vehicles for your business has now shifted. There needs to be very careful planning on that, especially as it's really hard to forecast what these additional costs are going to be because it's on a mileage basis. So trying to estimate what this mileage will be is a lot more challenging. And I think the main thing I would say that came out of this budget that was very well hidden is that the forecasts that have been put in place have lent very much into there being an increase in productivity from AI, from the adoption and utilization of AI throughout the workforce, no matter what sector you're in. But that requires you to be changing the way you work with technology to do that. So if you have not started to explore it, if your technology is old, outdated, and not in a modern setting that enables you to utilize AI, then realistically, this is the time you need to do it, because those that do not do that, according to the way that the government are forecasting productivity increases, will be left behind compared to their competitors. So there is a big shift from a compliance perspective. You need to be in modern technology to stay compliant. There's a big shift in what the government thinks businesses need to do, and that will be utilizing modern technology and automation and AI. Now, this is a very hard space to get correct. So just going out and doing it on your own may be a challenge. You may need to find people to help support you, whether those are people in your sector, specialists in the space. But those are the three areas I guess I would focus on. Kevin, have you got anything additional? Have I kind of taken all of your bits as well?
No, I thought that was brilliant. I was kind of thinking about AI because I've never seen the adoption of a new piece of technology happen so quickly and like across personal and professional lives. I think everybody knows what ChatGPT is, but like to see it being used, I guess first by people like, in their personal lives to chat to it and ask questions and figure things out, like is it's just been kind of like wildfire, like globally. Um, so I think where we're headed with this is a very quick, I guess, transition to use in the business workplace and people trying to figure out, well, how can I actually, bring this into the workplace? And it's definitely top of mind for a lot of businesses. Um, I think the adoption will accelerate over the next couple of years. And how I've been actually talking to some of the people in my team, which about this is imagine going for an interview, for a role right now, and getting asked like to tell me about your AI experience. Like I think most people would struggle to articulate it, like and generally kind of speak about it really well. So for SMEs out there, I do think it should be part of, identifying like where's the talent, like who knows how to use all of these tools that are out there and who can actually help us quantify how it can help us in our business. So definitely one to watch out for. But I think really important, Ryan, is the government have baked it into the productivity expectations, but productivity in the UK is already quite low compared to, counterparts across Europe, certainly. So I think there would be a big push for it. The apprenticeships piece could be really interesting, right? Like, could you bring in an apprenticeship who is doing courses in AI or studying AI or just has a really big appetite and bring them into the business and see what they can actually do?
Yeah, part of it is going to be experimenting, and part of it is then making sure your systems are set up to work effectively with it. And I think the other bit I want to touch on is that I guess if you are not doing this already, it's something you should do as an individual or as a business owner is budget and forecast. Because one of the key things that the government admitted openly on this is they're asking for a little bit from everyone. So it is, as an individual, going to tighten the way we have to look at from a financial perspective. And then from a business perspective, as I guess I outlined earlier, there are things that are coming in over the next 4 years that they've announced that will potentially hit you depending on what sector you're in. And I think you need to forecast optimistically and also prudently. So you've got I don't know, a fallback on what you would do. Maybe that is bringing productivity from additional systems. Maybe it is bringing apprenticeships and shifting the way you handle your workforce. But if you haven't got a active working forecasts that you can adjust in like real time, essentially. So I would say on a daily to weekly basis, that is something that I would strongly recommend doing. The systems enable you to do that out there now. You should be working with your accountant, with your business advisors, to make sure you have the right setup to get the most out of it. And if you're not doing it as an individual, and it's probably because I'm an accountant, incredibly nerdy, this is something that I do. And I know that when I've been looking at the future income and costs from my perspective, it can be scary. And so I would advise you doing that just to make sure you know what you can do and how you can spend effectively going forward.
Well, it puts you in a position where you're making choices based on the right information. Else it's you're feeling around in the dark a little bit and going off kind of what you think you know. And we see it all the time, like when people actually digitize, their business, whether that's across accounting or payroll or HR, they kind of have a lot of realization moments of, wow, I didn't actually know it was in this state, or I didn't know this data or statistic. So you actually put yourself in a much better. It's not just about digitizing; it's about understanding the business and then saying, "Well, now what choices do I have to make based off the knowledge that I've gained?"
Yeah, for sure. It's much better to be safe than sorry. It's not nerdy at all. I think that's safety is probably paramount at this point. But on that note, I guess looking forward to the new year and to the next year, 2026, what's your advice for businesses to help get them prepared during a time where there's ongoing economic uncertainty? They've had to contend with this already in the current landscape, but things don't look like they're going to improve swiftly. Although you never know. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
It it it's a tough one. Like it's kind of a little bit crystal ball because I think what the government is saying is, there's not a big expectation of economic growth, but there is a big expectation of productivity gains. So I think businesses I think it's crucial that they get it, time over the next couple of months, like to take that kind of step back and say, okay, well, what can we do? What do we know? And kind of like the way I view it actually in our business is what are we in control of? Like how much of our destiny are we actually in control of right now? And if that starts to feel like you're not, then I think you really need to look at like the shape of the business and what you're doing and what you need to improve. So it's really kind of people tend to do it naturally at the end of the year. I know a lot of businesses will obviously be really busy over the Christmas period, but just getting a half day or a day to do some real deep reflections, like with a business advisor or accountant or even the team internally, to sit back and say, okay, what's everybody thinking about next year? Like what should we be doing? And collecting that feedback. And then I think you get to a position if you have the right data and information and systems to say, okay, well, these are the choices that we need to make now to really protect ourselves and grow.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Kevin. Timing is everything, right? As we go into the Christmas period and into the new year, people normally want to make a change at that point, and making sure you understand where you are and what you can do is this is the perfect time to do it. If you, I guess, let's try and summarize some of those things that we talked about earlier. If you've got fleet and it's electric fleet at the moment, you're going to come to renewal, then you need to reassess. You need to just like discuss and plan, is this the right thing to do? If you've got, and this is probably the majority of business owners, got individuals on salary sacrifice scheme, it's not something you need to jump into and leap into now, but over the course of the next year or so, you should start to plan, what are we going to do? Are we going to change our policies? Are we still going to offer this in some way? Are we going to just sit and wait and see if they just unwind what they've done? That is an option as well. And I also strongly advise planning or asking your accountant to sit down the new year and talk about, should we be on salary if you're a business owner, or should we be extracting money through dividends? I would flag every accountant in the UK is probably overwhelmed by queries at the moment. So my advice would be to reach out to them in the future, maybe something to book in a meeting in the new year. And if you haven't got that deep relationship with your accountant, this is probably the time to have to reassess. Do you need someone that is advising you not only on your business, but is also advising you on how you should be setting up your internal system structures, data that you're obtaining, so that you can forecast, you can make quick adjustments to any of these changes if needed. Personally, I don't think anything that was announced was something where you have to panic. It's longer term. longer, I guess, future planning rather than anything else.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I guess that brings us to the Q&A portion of the discussion. Now, I'll just see if there are any questions that I can pull up. If anyone has any, now's your chance to shoot them across. We've got some, some really expert advice here, so might as well take this opportunity. But I'll just give people a minute or two to think. Don't be shy. Please pop them in the chat if you have any burning questions or anything that you feel that we haven't yet touched on. But before we get there, I'll just give you a chance to sort of round off a little bit. And are there any questions that you've sort of seen come up immediately in the aftermath of the budget, Ryan?
Uh, Main questions that have come up. I think it's quite general. It depends where you are, where you sit. A lot of it's when do we need to act? I've seen a question about what do payroll admins need to be aware of. I think in the short term, it's making sure that your system is ready and primed for the prompting you on any minimum wage checks. It should be automatic, realistically, if you're in a modern system flagging this. So that should be something you're looking at. And then longer term, thinking about what you do regarding salary sacrifice. I think that most of the questions have been, is this as bad as we were thinking, as bad as they were building up to? And realistically, I think the summary and overarching theme here is no, it's not, but it's not great for SMEs. There are some sectors that benefit from this to some extent, being retail, hospitality, but overall, it's just going to slightly squeeze you a bit more, which is very frustrating considering we need to grow the economy. And that was everything that's been talked about from the government and where we are. There has been a question I'll try and pick up on. So the income tax increase by 2%. I don't know if someone can follow up on that. Do you mean the dividend tax increase? Because there is no income tax increase. Just to clarify what I said earlier, you've got dividend tax increase of 2%, you've got interest rate tax increase by 2%, and you've got property rental tax increase by 2%. I think it's from 26, but let me just check that. I will mute myself and do some digging to confirm that whilst maybe Kevin summarizes as well.
You can check there in your library. There's a question there on the invoice digitally. Yeah, it's so basically e-invoicing is there is a global platform for it. So Singapore was one of the first countries in, I guess, Asia Pac to roll it out in the last few years. I was actually there. I lived there for quite a long time, and I was with Xero, the cloud accounting software, and we helped the government roll it out. So what it is basically a connection point where every invoice that's sent in the economy is centralized and reconciled, and your accounting system needs to be cloud, so you can receive digital invoices straight into your accounting system, and you can send them directly into somebody else's accounting system with a key that you're given for each client. It actually, the biggest benefit for SMEs is ensuring that if you are invoicing someone, that it's straight into their system straight away. Obviously, one of the goals is that you get paid certainly on time or maybe a bit quicker. And by all reports in Singapore, they saw bad debt days or sorry, debtor days actually come down by a couple of days on average. So big thing to get ready for. But I think probably the biggest priority from an accounting perspective is MTD over the next year or so.
Yeah, cool. Just to, I guess, pick up on, I did do the research now, and it's from April 2027, and it is the dividend, interest, and rental tax increase. So that gives us a little while. It's April 27. You've got a while to plan. So don't, as I said, panic. You don't need to rush with your accountant. It's something to look at as you go into the 2027 year. I think it's a really good question from Denise, which is not actually linked to the budget. I know this focused on the budget, but this came out separately to the budget, which is what are views on the U-turn of day one rights from the 2-year qualifying period to 6 months. I mean, they were planning, I guess, to do this from day one. So yeah, like you would get these rights that it'd be really hard to get rid of an employee that is not performing. It makes it a lot harder from a compliance perspective, and now that's been extended. I think it's great that it's not day one. I think there's so many issues that can come in that initial period where really early on you can tell if there's not a culture fit, and depending on that individual, it can be very challenging to get rid of them if you have to jump through hoops, because how would you validate, how would you prove that they can't perform in one day? I don't think that's physically possible. So the extension makes sense, is a relief compared to what was announced, when they came into control, when Labour took over. So I think that's a much better situation. And I think realistically, 6 months, you should know where you are. So with an individual in 6 months, from my experience, you know if they're going to be good or not good. So I think it's a realistic time frame from 2 years to 6 months. I don't think it's a massive issue, but that's a personal opinion here. I'm sure there's many others that have experienced other things that are going to cause problems for that,
Yeah,
like a shortened period of time.
6 months feels more logical, right? Like both parties, right? The employee and the employer get the opportunity to figure out if it's the right fit. But one thing that we are slightly concerned about is just making sure that SMEs know that this is changing. Like not everybody actually absorbs like all of the rules, like and understands like that they actually do need to change policies and change the structure and likely put in much more stringent, you could call it 30-day check-ins, 45-day check-ins, to have those discussions. Like, is this person actually doing what we expect them to do? Are they happy in the role? Like, are they really enjoying like the role? Did they expect it to be what it is? Because it's very challenging after that to go back and try and figure it out.
For sure. I don't think we have any further questions. I think most of them have been touched on. I want to add one actually. Some of the chat that I've heard, or some of the concerns that I've actually one's come through, so I'll do that one as well. But the employment rights bill, that's something that's on a lot of businesses' minds, and I wondered, yeah, how people can or how businesses can stay abreast of what's happening and what's to come, I suppose. There's a lot that's still yet to be ironed out.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because over the last couple of years, like quite a lot has changed. Like to stay on top of compliance changes, first needs like you need to understand it. Like how does it impact me? How does it impact my business? And then next step is like, okay, what do I actually need to do? Um, like at scale, like having this like digitized and a system in place like to support you, like really kind of means that you have a partner who's looking after that piece. We at Hero obviously offer like that within the system so the policies are updated when they should be. There's a big library of policies there. We have employment lawyers who work for us internally who rewrite the policies and all of our clients get them when they need them. Plus, we run webinars like this, right? Like to give the opportunity for people to share more information. But I do hear from a lot of SMEs that they kind of hear the headline of like what's changing, and it goes they park it away, especially if it's like not coming soon because they're just so busy trying to figure things out. So there's definitely risk in that, like, and you got to be really careful and explain the changes both um internally to the leadership team, but also to everybody in the business.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so I've seen a few questions, so I'll try and just jump in and answer some of these quickly if possible. So the business rates on the 500k of properties, that is on the rateable value. That's not necessarily the recommended retail price, that's the rateable value of the property. The invoicing digitally, would that be for a portal? So e-invoicing uses a connection tool that will use whatever software you're on to digitally send it via a coded script into another software. It uses different rules, different systems and different methods to do this. There has been no, I guess, announcement on which ones would be mandatory. So at this stage, all you need to ensure is that you're on a modern system, modern finance system, and you'll be fine. They will have that functionality in. It's got a number of years to develop all of that, and essentially all you will do is connect into your supplier via or your customer via a code, and then it will share it digitally from your system into their system, all in a secure way. The collecting tax in real time for self-assessments. That is making tax digital for income tax. It has been, I guess, out there for a while, but has not been brilliantly advertised by the government. You need to talk to your accountant about this. You will need a system to be able to handle it. There are hybrid systems you can use with Excel. There are cloud native systems. There are apps you can use on your phone. Depending on what you do and how you work, you will need a system, and you need to report quarterly on how you operate that. So please ensure you talk to your accountant if you've got one. If you haven't, I'd strongly advise engaging with one on what would work effectively for you. The new 6-month dismissal rule, I cannot find when that's coming in. I know this was only recently announced. I don't know if anyone else, if Kevin, if you're aware of this, but I don't know. And then the final one I've seen is regarding hospitality field and what tools you can use. Realistically, you're going to have to speak to a software advisor on that. More than happy to have a chat. I don't charge for a chat. If you wanted to reach out to me afterwards, just connect me on LinkedIn, drop me a message. Happy to help wherever I can on that. I would have to discuss what you've got in the setup, that everything is contextual. There are so many systems out there. Lots of them are really good. You have to find the right one for you. I think I've now answered a lot of that. Hopefully that's most, if not all of the questions.
I think you did. I was scanning through, answering some questions in the chat as well. Yeah, just confirming Lizzie Nixon asked a question like, yeah, individuals don't need to be involved in the invoicing. It's B2B. And Michelle, yes, April 2026 is the change to the 6-month rule. Yep. Or the introduction of the 6-month rule. Yeah.
Oh,
The
that
only other
was very
bit, sorry, Cooper, the only other bit I've just seen is Nick's asked, they're a plan to start salary sacrifice scheme. Is it worth still doing now? Realistically, you can benefit from it in the short term. There is a tax benefit. It's really weighing up the admin burden to the tax benefit. If you've got a large workforce, yes, it probably is worthwhile. If you've got a small one, it may not be worth the admin of doing it. If you're on a modern system, a modern payroll HR system is going to be far easier than trying to do it in a traditional, outdated, or manual way. So lots of things that will affect that. I guess summary: if you're on a good system, you've got a big workforce, probably worth doing. Just effectively communicate. It's a short-term thing. It may be removed depending on government policy.
Yeah, sure. So that brings us to the end of the Q&A section. Thank you so much for your insight. I feel like we got a lot covered there. So hopefully you've had all your questions answered. And if you want to find out a bit more, you can look at this slide, scan the QR code that should be up on your screen, and you can find some more information there about how to future-proof your business, payroll, and HR. I want to thank our speakers, Ryan and Kevin, for breaking down a really complex budget so clearly. I feel like I've taken away a lot as well. And to all of you for joining us and engaging in thoughtful questions. We also have an article about some of the blind spots, some of which is mentioned earlier, which you can see here. If you scan the QR code, that's in our newsroom. So we sort of break down some of these topics that were covered in quite a bit of detail, and cover some of the concerns that some businesses that we spoke to have raised. And we have a lot of more content as well on the budget that you can scan through to keep up to date. And generally just go to our UK News page, our newsroom, to find out more. I'm just gonna go quickly back to if you haven't had a chance to scan this, back to the last QR code slide, because I think I moved on from that quite quickly. But there's heaps of information to glean from this, and I suppose the main point here is to just keep up to date as much as possible, have those conversations with your relevant teams to stay abreast of everything. So I want to thank Kevin and Ryan once again for everything. And if you'd like to continue the conversation or explore how these changes could impact your organization, please do feel free to reach out. We'll be very happy to share more information on that front. And I want to thank you again for being here. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but we got through in the end. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.